you good vibe, we shine on the light. Welcome to Chat Night, we bring you good vibe, we shine on the light. We all over the world, Chat Night Africa. We all over the world, Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night, we bring you good vibe, we shine on the light. Welcome to Chat Night, we bring you good vibe, we shine on the light. We all over the world, Chat Night Africa. We all over the world, Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night, the only place that we give you good vibes. Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night, all over the world we are shining the light. Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Voices of Africa on Chat Night. My name is Divine Nchamukong, and I am anchoring this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Sitting in a packed car in just about any town or city in the United States, Africa, or Europe is as dangerous as walking the streets in a war zone. Violent crimes way through the roof. What's even more frightening and disturbing is that teenagers are those largely involved in the spike in violent crimes. The troubling phenomenon got the attention of Chat Night Africa, as you would expect. Today, teens tell their story. What is it your children wish you knew about them? We are about to embark on an exploration of the teens world. Parents, I guarantee this, you will be edified. Two teenagers, Daniel Munang in Canada and Nathan Takusi in Maryland, are about to light up this platform. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now welcome our first guest, Daniel Munang, connecting live from Canada. Daniel, thank you so much for accepting my invitation to come and take questions on Chat Night Africa. I have no illusion that people of your age group and even parents are going to learn enormously from what you have to tell them. Again, Daniel Munang, connecting live from Canada. And at this point, I'm going to introduce the second guest. He's a terrific young man, Nathan Takusi, connecting now from Maryland. Nathan. Nathan, I thank you for honoring our invitation, accepting to come and take questions on Chat Night Africa.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And ladies and gentlemen, as we always say, we give priority to ladies to take the first question. And today we have a lady, Daniel Afumbong.
We love Chat Night Africa. Keep watching Chat Night Africa.
Daniel, when you see teens, people of your age group involved in violent crimes, locked away in different juvenile detention centers, whether in Canada, where you are, whether in Africa, whether in the United States, or wherever in the world, does that concern you?
Yes, thank you for having me. That's a really great question, especially in the state of today, where every single time we look on the news, we see something relating to crime. And most of the time, the suspects and the victims are both youth. And this is especially concerning because the youth are our future of tomorrow. And if they tend to stray away into paths full of crime, violent due to issues such as societal, socioeconomic, and also issues with their friends and peers, then it becomes very unfortunate because then our future population, our future leaders are being locked up rather than being able to share their great ideas and contribute to our societies across the world.
Beautiful. I told you that when these teenagers come here, there'll be fireworks. You use a word that touches my soul, and you're talking about peers. Do you have friends?
Yes, I do.
How is it that a lot of them are in prison and you are not?
That's a really good question. And I think that it comes down to the type of peer that you choose. And there are many sayings across the world that you like who you are, who you hang out with. And if you tend to hang out with people who are more related into, let's say, you're a high achiever in school, you hang out with people who also have the same ambitions academically, the chances of you excelling academically are higher. However, let's say you're a bit impressionable and you don't know necessarily what you want, and you hang out with people who are going down the wrong path, who are drinking, smoking, doing crime, stealing, then the chances of you, even though you may think that you're not going to do those things, the chances are exponentially higher due to those you surround yourself with. And especially in metropolitan areas where crime is on an influx, it seems that you have to be able to quote unquote fit in and fall to peer pressure. However, what I say is the power of no. And I discussed this in my podcast, The Mindset Spot, with my dad. And we realized that saying no, though just one word, can then create many more opportunities for you in the future. Even if you lose one friend, instead of losing one friend, it's better to lose that one friend than to lose your life in jail because of the decision that you may make. And it just takes one choice, one decision to truly make your stance, and to realize that having friends doesn't mean that you have to do bad things with them. Having friends is a group of people who uplift you, support you, and want you to be on the straight and narrow path to success.
Ladies and gentlemen, I told you about Danielle. You can watch this broadcast in high resolution on our YouTube channel on the internet, www.chatnightafrica.net. And you can also watch it on Facebook, 2 places on Facebook. You will go away thanking yourselves that you came to watch a high-powered broadcast like this one today. You have only just seen the firing shots. Let me now invite our gentleman on the platform today. That's Nathan Takusi. Nathan, with the uptick of violent crimes and unfortunately people of your age group involved in committing those crimes, society often lay the blames on parents. Are there any inaccuracies in this assessment, sir?
Well, I do believe that parents do have influence on their kids. Now, that doesn't mean that they're completely responsible for the decisions that their children make. A parent's job is to guide their child and help them make the right decisions so that when they do go out into the world and when they do go to school and when they do go out with their friends, they know right from wrong. I do think that parents can have an influence, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. If you know what you're doing is wrong, you should know what to do, and you should know that I shouldn't be drinking, I shouldn't be smoking, I shouldn't be doing things that I have no business doing, essentially.
In what ways could parents be responsible for the actions of their teenagers?
Well, that's also a very great question. Well, parents, if you have your kid in an environment where they're it's like if you're in an environment where there's a lot of crime, a lot of drugs, a parent that's putting you in that position is not doing their job very well, because as a parent, you're supposed to make your child feel safe. You're supposed to put your child in an environment that will help them prosper instead of putting them in an environment where they're impressionable to certain things. So as a parent at a young age, you should be having your child in front of good areas and not in an environment where they'll be forced to make a wrong decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can see these are two amazing teenagers on Chat Night Africa's Voices of Africa today.
We love Chat Night Africa.
So keep listening. We're not done. At this point, I'm going to bring I'm going to bring Danielle Munang on the platform to take another pointed question. Danielle Munang.
Keep watching Chat Night Africa.
Danielle, you talked about economic factor as being one of the things that predispose teenagers like you to crime. Would you please throw more light on that?
Yes, of course. And I think that economic factor also relates to social media as well, because a lot of teenagers, we see Instagram, we see Snapchat, we see TikTok, we see so many social media platforms that even though if you're not poor or of lower economic status, seeing people in Lamborghini, seeing people with Louis Vuitton bags, seeing people flying first class everywhere, that could make one feel low self-esteem and then think they're poor. And in order for them to attain this life, they feel like they have to resort to any means possible, whether it's scamming, stealing, other things, in order for them to quote unquote meet this status. However, the case, unfortunately, is this status 99% of the time portrayed as social media is not 100% transparent. And a lot of people get lost in that trap. And then when they try to obtain these material items and they try to obtain this status, which doesn't exist, then crime and then negative things start to happen because they obtain it in the wrong way and try to portray this idea of soft life when in fact it doesn't exist.
Chat Night Africa's Voices of Africa. As I observed earlier on, when people see crimes, teenagers carjacking vehicles, involved in rape, murder, the prosecutorial finger is pointed at parents. What are parents not doing? Are there things in parenting that are missing that therefore lead these children into the alleys of crime?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. And I'm not a parent, so I'm going to speak on it from a child perspective.
Yeah, no way.
So from a child's perspective on a parent, I think that parents, they do their role, they guide, they nurture children, and they do it very well. And I know that this thoughts have been brought up about socioeconomic and the area one lives in. But I do think, for example, I'm going to use the analogy of a student. If a student was in the most private, most prestigious school where everyone gets 100 averages, if they still don't want to study and they don't want to do their share, they're not going to get that high average. Similarly, if a student's in a school full of drugs, gangs, alcohol, and they really want to succeed, if they put their mind to it, on the contrary, they will succeed. So at the end of the day, life is about choices and it comes down to that. But to answer the question, I do think that parents do have to contribute to this. And the way that parents can stop the crime is through nurturing their children's hobbies and talents. For example, if your kid loves to talk, put them in singing. If your kid loves to dance, put them in dance, and always encourage academics and studies as well. For example, in my case, my parents have enabled me to have a podcast called The Mindset Spot. They've also enabled me to create something called innovative volunteerism, which is what I do through sewing, what others do through many things, such as solar dryers, carpentry, which allow young people and those who are young at heart to turn their passion, for example, mine of fashion, into a way to create economic opportunity and also solve societal and communal problems. And through this, it will allow us to develop our skills and also be contributing members to society. And to parents, what I do say, long story short, is to nurture your children so that they don't have to resort to crime to get what they want, but they can resort to the talents and the stuff you've been nurturing them since day one so that they can also obtain their dreams.
Before I bring up Nathan Takusi, the one strong question I'm going to ask you is, Danielle, talk to me. What is it that your father, somebody I know very well, very accomplished person, what is it that he's doing that you think other parents are not doing?
Yeah, so to put things in perspective, I do think that throughout the journey, throughout my 15 years of existence, my dad has done a more than exceptional job of raising me and nurturing me. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to one foundational thing: to believe and support in your child. And once you have this idea of believing and supporting in your child, whatever endeavor they pursue, then you'll be there to back them up because you have raised them with the values to realize that what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And to put in perspective, when I was 4 years old, I got my first phone. When I was 3, I had an iPad, and I know that's a quote unquote societal taboo, giving your kid becoming an iPad kid, but it actually benefited me because then I was able to learn my research skills and interact with technology in a way that's friendly and not harmful. And this is what I mean by nurturing and supporting your child. Because from there, I was able to watch YouTube and see the way people talk, which has helped me hone my public speaking skills and led me to open a podcast. And also, I was able to watch tutorials, which made me spark my interest in fashion and start innovative volunteerism. And through what my dad and my mom have been doing, it has allowed me to succeed in a world full of complexities. Similarly to other parents who are watching, I think once you come down to the foundation, it's like a house. Once the foundation is strong, then once the pillars and the design comes together, you know that it'll stand strong. Like your child, once you develop the foundations and the morals and values you'd like to instill them with and support them on their endeavors, then they'll be able to succeed in whatever they choose to pursue. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, I'll come back to you. You're going to have to tell us how the iPhones and iPads did not distract you. Instead, they helped you, because that's been the worry of a lot of parents. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, here is Nathan Takutsi.
We love Chat Night Africa. Keep watching Chat Night Africa.
Nathan, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Danielle. What is it that your parents are doing to make sure that you don't end up in juvenile detention center someday?
Well, one thing that my parents do a really good job doing is checking in on how I'm doing mentally and physically and socially. That's one thing that my mom does all the time in the morning. I go to school in Towson, so it's a 20-minute drive. While we're driving, we say our numbers. That's how we're doing socially, mentally, and physically on a scale from 1 to 10. And one thing that my mom does a great job doing is if I say, "Oh, I'm at a 6 emotionally," she's gonna talk about how we can get our 6 to a 10 and how we can one thing that my parents do is that when there's an issue, they make sure to address it and they make sure not to just let it be there, because mental health is a really big issue, and it plays a part in why a lot of crimes are happening. It has a lot to do with mental health. So one thing my parents do a great job doing is just checking on how we're doing mentally and physically, and being affable, being easy to talk to, because we're not scared to go to our mom if we have an issue.
Nathan, as a young man, you have your aspirations. And sometimes we parents, especially we from of African descent, we have our expectations. Are there times that you feel pressured by your parents to do the things that are not necessarily bad, but that just don't align with what your aspirations are? If yes, give us some examples.
I do, because as a Cameroonian boy, where sometimes you're like, oh, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be this. But one thing you need to understand is when your parents are saying something, it comes from the right place. Now, the way that I react to that is, listening to what they have to say. Because a lot of times as kids, when we're listening, we're not listening. Sometimes we're just hearing, but we're not listening to what they're saying. When a mom or a dad is like, oh, a doctor is a good career path, they're saying that because they know it's going to help you prosper. They know it's going to help you be successful. And that's all a parent wants for you, is for you to be successful. So yeah, just listening to what they have to say and knowing that it comes from a good place is how I respond to what they're saying.
Beautiful question, beautiful answer. I have no doubt your parents are going to be proud of you. I'm going to ask about the same question to Danielle Munang, who is connecting live from Canada. Danielle, you are a very, very ambitious young lady. I've watched you speak in parliamentary sessions in Canada. That got my attention. So you have your own mind. It's true that Daddy has a PhD and he's so much interested in climate change. But the question we're going to ask you now is, are there times that your aspirations are in conflict with those of your dad or your parents, dad and mom? Give us some examples.
Yeah, so to be honest with you, no. Like, there's not really a time where I feel like my aspirations are necessarily conflicted. Like, for example, with the Model Parliament program, I was invited to the Ontario Legislative Assembly, which to Americans, that's your equivalent of your House of Congress. And with that, I was able to debate on transport policy and talk about economic and transportation reform within my province of Ontario. So to put things in perspective, although transportation policy and economic policy is not hand in hand with climate change, my dad was very ecstatic, very excited for me to be able to voice my passions and to be able to be in such a place where I'm with like-minded teens who have a passion for politics and especially policy. And with other things, for example, with school or like future careers, when they say something, I listen, and my dad, he's a very good mentor, and through innovative volunteerism, he has mentored tens of thousands of youth across the continent. So I tend to realize that if he mentored this amount of people, what he's saying makes sense. You know what I mean? So like, I take that advice with wholeheartedly and understand that whether I agree with it or not, it comes from a good place. And no parent wants to see their child fail, similarly to what Nathan said. Yeah. And with that in mind, whether I 100% agree with it or not, I understand the place we're coming from. And like a bill in the House of Parliament, you can reform, you can make amendments so that it fits both sides. So if I don't 100% agree with something, I hear their perspective, say mine, and from there it gets resolved. But long story short, no, I haven't seen any conflicts between my dad's ambitions and mine because they align with the focus of wanting to make an impact to each and every single person.
That's heartwarming. That's heartwarming because it doesn't always happen. I mean, not all the time. Now, you observe society a lot, and the question I'm going to ask you now has to do with social media gadgets. Your dad gives you an iPad, an iPhone, and what is it that keeps you from abusing those things? That keeps you from being distracted, so to speak?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And especially in the influx of digital footprint and technological issues arising with mental health, society, physical health as well, ergonomics. So many things are being connected to technology and digital footprint. And I think that the way that I was able to overcome these obstacles and not even have to face them is due to how early I was able to receive these things. And a lot of people may contest this and say that, oh, that if you give something to a kid early, it's just going to make them do it at an earlier age. However, I disagree with that and think that through me being able to obtain these technological devices, it allowed me to navigate the internet as a safe space rather than one that's so scary and dangerous. And this relates back to digital footprint because I knew from a young age that whatever you post on the internet stays with you forever. And that's a lot of things, a lot of teens fail to realize that if you post on the internet insulting a celebrity, insulting someone, cyberbullying, that can come back to bite you. On the contrary, if you post good things, for example, my podcast, even my OLA videos on there, in the future, let's say a university is looking at you, they're going to see those good things and be like, wow, this is impressive. However, if they see bad things, you insulting people on the internet, they're going to be like, that's bad. But to answer your question, life is a matter of choices. And at the end of the day, whether you give a kid a phone at 4 or 14, they're going to make those choices. And if you instill values and morals such as being diligent, such as being respectful, being kind, then it'll show both physically and digitally.
We love Chat Night Africa.
And this is one huge reason why you love Chat Night Africa. Daniel Munang.
Keep watching Chat Night Africa.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching this ebullient show, combustible by every definition of it. Oh boy, when I heard about these two teens, I said to myself, I'm in trouble here today. And you've seen the evidence. If you're watching on YouTube, please do us the favor, hit the button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. I think by now, you realize the kind of content we bring you on Chat Night Africa. That's transformative content. At this point, I'm going to bring up Mr. Nathan Takusi. Thank you, Nathan. Nathan, your dad promotes culture a lot. That's Mr. Takusi Emmanuel. And your mom is the traditional African woman who loves and respects her husband a lot. What is it about African parenting that you have reservations about?
Well, are you asking like what I don't like about it? I'm not quite sure.
Yes. Are there things that you feel that the parenting methods are influenced by the cultural origins of your parents?
That makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, I do have some reservations about it, but one thing I do know when parents say things, I understand that. Oh well, since they grew up in Africa, their experiences and my experiences here in America are completely different. Now, of course, I don't like how they say a lot of things, but it's out of their love and their compassion for us. Now, I don't really enjoy a little bit of ignorance to the way that we do things in America, the way that like social media, technology, all of that is advancing every single day. And in Africa, like as teenagers, we all go through the same thing, but at the end of the day, our experiences are different. But I do appreciate how my parents, they are always trying to look out for me. And that's why when they say things about how they grew up in Africa, how they try to relate it, I kind of understand how they can relate it. But at the end of the day, it's not the exact same thing. So.
Thank you for being very, very honest with me. What is it about parenting? What is it about teenagers growing up that you think a lot of parents have trouble understanding or have trouble having the terms, get to live with?
Well, one thing that I know every single teenager my age has gone through is peer pressure. Everybody my age has gone through that. Now, they went through peer pressure in Africa and back then, but it all comes to the point where we have more access to things now. So the way that somebody at my school would pressure me to do something, like something that a friend of mine would pressure me to do, is completely different than something that a friend of my dad would when he was my age. So peer pressure. I do think that is what really the main thing that African parents don't really understand. And I think that as time goes on, they will probably understand, because it's something that has always happened. And as time goes on, it will make more sense.
Thank you.
And you're watching Voices of Africa. I have two terrific teenagers on the screen with me. Is Nathan Takusi, and we have this young lady from Canada. That's Lady Danielle Munang. Now, I'm going to leave two of you on the screen to have a conversation. We always say ladies before gentlemen. So I'm going to leave two of you to chat for about 3-4 minutes. You can ask each other questions. Keep your answers short. That way we can have time to have more questions from each of you. Now, Danielle, you go first.
Yeah, so Nathan, I've heard your point. They're really brilliant. And I was wondering, from an American context, how do you think that like people who end up in these facilities, do you think it has to do with like lack of extracurriculars, lack of other hobbies? And how do you think your hobbies have contributed to your success and not going down the wrong path?
I really do believe that extracurriculars has plays a part in it. Like one thing in my school, there are a lot of kids who don't play any sports. They're just not interested in doing anything because they think it's cool. One thing that's getting people in these facilities and getting people locked up and everything, that it all comes from trying to be cool, trying to just chill, But at the end of the day, I do think that my extracurriculars, like I play sports. I'm involved in the Black Student Union at my school. Being involved, it kind of distracts you from wanting to be like other people, wanting to be cool, because when you're doing so much things, you can really find what you're passionate about. And sports and a desire for helping mankind is something that I'm very passionate about. And that's why I don't really focus on wanting to be cool or wanting to do things that I have no business doing, because yeah.
Yeah. Like similarly, like here, like there's a like, for example, if you do sports at my school, like you're considered like cool, but like if you do clubs, you're not. But at the end of the day, they just all come together to make you like a more well-rounded person. And to follow up on that, I was wondering, what do you think, like in your community, the main cause of this? Do you think it's more social media related? Do you think it's more socioeconomic? Like, what do you think?
I think it has a lot to do with social media. It has a lot to do with technology in general, because the music people listen to, the people that certain people follow on Instagram, it can have an influence on the way that you act. For me, I have Instagram, I have social media, but it's all about, I'm not saying social media is a bad thing. It all comes to like the way that you use it. It's okay to have Instagram. My mom has Instagram, but it's just the way that you use it and the way that you just make sure you don't abuse the opportunities that you're given. And I think that because a lot of people abuse the opportunities that they're given, that's why a lot of people tend to fall into the wrong crowd and tend to do things that they have no business doing.
Nathan, your turn now to ask Danielle questions.
Well, one thing I really noticed about Danielle, I realized that you're a very well-spoken person. I realized that I heard that you have a desire for helping people, I believe. So I just wanted to know, what do you aspire to be when you're older? Because,
Yeah, so that's a really good question. To be honest, I don't know, and that's okay. But I do know the end goal is to help people in one way or another, and I think that's going to be my force in driving and picking a career. And I don't think necessarily it's about the career I end up doing, whether it's politics, engineering, med, law. It doesn't necessarily matter to that, because you could still be a doctor and not make an impact, but you could work at McDonald's and still make more of an impact, right? So I think that it'll just come down to that. But the end goal definitely is to help people and to make the world a better place.
That's great. And I also wanted to ask a little bit more about your podcast. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So my dad and I run a podcast called The Mindset Spot weekly. And we discuss environmental, social, economic issues and how you can leverage what you have right now to better yourself economically, and also like through neuroplasticity and changing your mind from the common beliefs and to shift it to something that can help you in your society. And for example, like with technology, we talk about it all the time about how it's a double-edged sword, like you mentioned, and how it could be used for good and used for bad. Like recently, March Madness, like LSU versus Iowa, a lot of people ended up insulting like the players on the basketball team, which then we all have rights, we all have freedom of expression, but the way you use those rights and use those freedoms can then affect you and lead you to the wrong path. So we generally just discuss how issues in the world relate to our day-to-day lives and how we can leverage what we have, for example, leveraging the power of no, so that we can develop ourselves socially.
I'm going to ask both of you. Danielle talks about the power of no. Nathan, are there times you hesitate, you are reluctant in telling your friends, no, I'm not doing this, without risking isolation?
Of course. That's something that every 14-year-old goes through. Sometimes I'm at a new school. I'm a freshman in high school, so of course I'm trying to make friends. But when you say no in front of a big group of people that you want to like you, it's hard because sometimes you wanna make friends, you wanna have fun because we're in high school. But at the end of the day, saying no when you don't want to be put in a certain situation can help. But yeah, I do struggle saying no because sometimes I'm trying to make friends, I'm trying to build a friend group, and yeah, so saying no can be difficult.
Have your friends come across to you as being obnoxious? If yes, how do you handle that?
Yeah, everybody can be obnoxious at times. I do think that as a society, we tend people, boys my age, tend to focus on the wrong things. I go to all boys school, so I know a lot about the way that boys my age act. So certain things like thinking about the wrong stuff, thinking about, oh, you suck at this. But like, for example, if somebody's like, oh, you don't talk to a lot of girls or whatever, it's like, in 10 years, will I be worried about a lot of girls, or will I be worried about how I'm doing in real life? So yeah, just sometimes that can come across as obnoxious, but at the end of the day, you really have to worry about, how is this going to affect me? How is this, what he's talking about benefit me, or will it, how is it going to help me?
What is it? I mean, you look.
I'm sorry, it's cutting off a little bit. Hello?
Up Danielle, and then obviously bring back Nathan momentarily. Danielle, you look to me like a very, very focused lady. You stay focused on your stuff. What is it that what are you doing that other teenagers, young ladies, beautiful, smart like you, are not doing?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chamakong. I feel like a lot of teenagers, like similarly to what Nathan said, the priorities are a bit conflicted. And to be honest, I'm not doing more than the average teenager. In fact, I'd say that like many other teenagers are doing brilliant things. But what I believe sets me apart is the motivation to the future, like long-term, short-term pain, long-term gain, right? Like, let's say, for example, my podcast, they're early in the morning. Do I want to wake up at like 9 a.m. all the time on a weekend when I could be sleeping in? Not always. However, I think of the long-term goal and think of the thinking the long-term from now, how will this benefit me? However, a lot of people tend to think of short-term and realize that, oh, I'll sleep in today, I'll sleep in tomorrow, and procrastinate. And through procrastination, you're going to have to face these adversities eventually. So might as well face them now and strive and become the best. So that's what I'd say sets me apart, the ability to think long term, and also the ability to be able to say no to procrastination and also say no to other complexities that occur, especially as a teenager.
Danielle Munang.
We love Chat Night Africa.
Danielle, I'm so happy to hear that you get along with your parents so well, smoothly. But at this moment, as we speak, there are children who are in festering conflicts with their parents. What do you think brews conflicts between teenagers and their parents?
Yeah, so I think I'm very fortunate to have parents who are very understanding and who also are, quote unquote, in touch with the times. And a lot of this has to do with, like similarly to Nathan said, the cultural barrier, especially in the diaspora. However, I do think that I'm going to use an analogy from like when I was in the Ontario Legislative Assembly. We have the slogan for our Congress, Audi Alterum Partum, which is hear the other side. And this generally comes to lack of communication and miscommunication. And if you were able to listen to your parents and see where they're coming from, then you'll be able to understand the foundation, the morals and values that they're trying to instill, which even though it's coming off in a way that is off-putting, the morals and true message, it's not going to be off-putting. So to answer your question, I do think that in order for this to come to a halt, we must hear the other side, and we must be able to amend and negotiate and hear each other so that we can be able to grow and be able to not be in conflicts as often.
You are watching Voices of Africa on Chat Night. You can watch this show on our website, www.chatnightafrica.net. It's our stunning website. You can also watch on YouTube in high definition. You can see on the frame of this broadcast how you can get to YouTube. We're on Facebook. We are everywhere. We're on the internet. Thank you, Roger, for staying up late at night in Nigeria to make sure that this broadcast is aired concurrently on all those social media handles. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue this conversation, I have some really pointed questions for the two guests. I have the teenagers. We have a little interlude. Please stay tuned. Watch this.
I've been having conversations with people in the background, and the kinds of things they say about what you do for the community, you cannot imagine how big that is.
right, you're watching Voices of Africa on Chat Night. If you think that you liked the first part of the broadcast, watch what we are going to do now. And my guest before anything else is Mr. Nathan Takusi. Nathan Takusi connecting from Maryland. Nathan, you have a lot of friends. While you get along with your parents, I can tell you 1000% sure that's not the case with a lot of teenagers. How do you make sure that the rights that they teach you in school keep you aligned with the advice that your parents get? Are there times that you begin to feel that, you are this age and so you should be given priority or given some rights? You should be allowed to enjoy some rights as a growing young adult.
That's a good question. So at school, I attend a Catholic school, so I do learn a lot of the values that my mom and my dad have instilled in me. But one of the rights that I do think that us teenagers should have is a right to being able to express ourselves, being able to say what's on our mind, because a lot of times in society, and this is part of the reason why a lot of people are, going down the wrong path, is because they're afraid to speak. Sometimes I'm afraid to speak, but that's something that every teenager I think I know has gone through. So one right I think that I should possess is being able to speak my mind, being able to say what is on my mind. And a lot of times as a 14-year-old boy, a lot of people do not take what I say seriously. And that's the case for a lot of teenagers in America. So I think that I should be able to voice my opinions clearly. And yeah.
Are there times that your parents think that, you should say what you think, but hey, they have the veto card to stop? Hey, come and stop right there. You're going overboard. Have you had situations like that?
Well, of course, yeah. So, like I said earlier, my parents are from Cameroon, and we have different, not beliefs necessarily, but we view life in a different way. So the way that school was in Cameroon in 1980 isn't the same as how I go to school every day in 2024 in America. So yeah, I do understand that I have the right to speak my mind and say what I have to say clearly, but also I do remember that they are my parents and I should respect their opinions. And that's also one thing that teenagers should know is although you should voice your opinion, you should also respect what other people have to say and respect other people's opinions. And I also believe that as parents, listening to what your child has to say is very crucial. So when my mom or my dad says something that I don't necessarily agree with, it's all about respecting their opinion. And like Daniela said that earlier, seeing both sides. So you can take what you have to say and take what your parents have to say, and just understanding and respecting both sides and seeing how you can come to a common denominator.
Keep watching Chat Night Africa.
Nathan, your brilliance scares me.
Thank you.
You are a human being, and as human beings, we have emotions. How do you express anger when your parents are telling you the things you don't want to hear?
Like I said earlier, when my parents say something that I don't necessarily agree with, something that doesn't quite make sense to me, it's all about respect. Now, I'm not saying that every time my mom or dad says something that I don't necessarily like, I just walk away and forget about it. Sometimes I do get upset, but it's knowing how to control your emotions, and having self-discipline when you're talking is really important, not for teenagers, but for everybody. And that happens at work. When you're at work, Sometimes you don't have the same sometimes you don't have the same values, the same beliefs, the same opinions at school, when you're talking to your friends. But the way that I express my anger is just staying calm and collected and just understanding, they come from they have different experiences. I have different experiences. So we're not gonna agree on everything, because that's just not how life works. You're not gonna agree on everything. People are gonna have different values and different things that they believe in. So yeah.
Wow. Nathan Takusi. And you are watching Voices of Africa. At this point, I'm going to bring on Danielle Munang. Danielle, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked. Great job, Danielle and Nathan. Wow, that's beautiful. I hope many of your Cameroonian American peers get to watch this. Great discussion we all need to have. And I can tell you, Danielle and Nathan, parents are learning a great deal from the statements you are making. Let me come back to the question I asked my other guest, Nathan. Danielle, what do you think is at the source of the intractable conflicts that some parents get to experience with their teenagers?
Yeah, so similarly to what you have previously stated, rights is a big issue. And I think that when we put into perspective, what is a right? A right is the ability to do or not to do something. And from a Canadian perspective, we have our Charter of Rights, but the number one right is the reasonable limits clause, which says that you have a right, but also within a reasonable limits. And once you have your right, for example, freedom of expression, there's also after that right, after that freedom, what happens? If you use that said freedom of expression to insult, berate people, whether in person or online, then what happens after that? Is it also, it's also your right to get detained for committing a crime. There are also a lot of rights, and we can't pick and choose which rights we'd like to have and which rights we simply just put a blind eye to. But to answer your question, I think that what is the root of this problem, similarly to what Nathan said, is the difference in ideologies and values, which in life, that's always going to happen. However, what we need to realize is that rights, although they are pivotal and vital for human development in the 21st century, we must realize that within a right, there is also the right to have that right as well. Somebody has their freedom of expression, but somebody else has their freedom to be respected. And with respect to that, we must realize that although we can say whatever we want, there are going to be consequences for our actions. And if we go around speaking our mind left, right, center, then that can land us in problems. And hence that can also lead to juvenile detention centers. If you say something, someone gets offended, they punch you, kill them. That's how it starts. And although freedom of expression in conclusion is a great thing, we must realize the consequences of our actions and not go ballistic with it.
Danielle, I'm going to ask you the question I asked Nathan. You are a human being with emotions. There are times you're going to feel unhappy towards your parents. I know they're great parents. So when you're unhappy, when they're telling you the things you don't want to hear, how do you express anger?
Well, I think like the Model Parliament program has really taught me a lot, not only within politics and civics, but also within my own life. And for example, in the House of Commons or in the US Congress, representatives and members, they're going to disagree with each other, but you don't see them yelling. Well, they're not supposed to, at least. You don't see them yelling at each other, although they can express their frustration, you don't see them going back and forth, yelling, having screaming matches. Well, they're not supposed to, although it does happen sometimes. Towards my life, I think that although there are not always going to be things that I 100% agree with, we have to come to the perspective, back to the core point of hearing the other side. And if, for example, I hear something that I'm not 100% inclined to agree with, I reflect and realize why they're saying that. And from there, try to think about the principle of the content rather than the content itself. And from then I can voice my opinions, not necessarily in the moment, because in the moment you're especially heated, but after just reflecting and thinking of the principle, then you can be able to express your thoughts. And this relates back to the real world, because if someone says something in a classroom that you're not entirely agreeing with, that doesn't give you the right to go punch them. That doesn't give you the right to go curse them out and say a bunch of uncalled for, unnecessary things. Similarly, in a familial situation, if my parents say something I don't 100% agree with, that doesn't give me the right to go and do the most. In the real world, we must stay collected and recollect our thoughts and then proceed. And similarly, in my household, if I don't 100% agree with something, I recollect my thoughts and then proceed as well.
This is beautiful, Daniel. If one day you do not run for parliament, I'll be really, really surprised. I got somebody on the line. Hello. Yes, please just hang on. You are watching Voices of Africa. Hello. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, hi, how are you?
I'm good. That's Reverend Dr. Doreen Fobi Takusi, the mother of Nathan, on the line. And I will also be talking to Dr. Richard Munang. Doreen, what is it that just makes this young man such a formidable force? What is it?
Nathan is the youngest of 5 of our children. And I would say that Nathan has benefited from having me and my husband, one, and of course, having 4 siblings. And his uniqueness, as you can see, Nathan is very outspoken and Nathan is very communicative, very, very communicative. Nathan would tell me, Mom, that doesn't make sense. Mom, I think you're ignorant about this. And we have learned to say, okay, son, let us engage. Let us understand. What do you mean? What are you talking about? And by so doing, it has built his confidence at home, because it starts at home before you send him out in the world. And that's one of the things that he told you in the morning. I'll ask about how you're doing emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. We talk about that every morning. And when he comes back, we talk about it. We do affirmations. So he's just a very, very communicative person that likes to talk what he's thinking. And he says that in a very respectful way, too. And I really appreciate that about him, that he has a lot of people around. We have a household of 7 people. So he's benefiting from all of us and telling us what we do right and what we do wrong, and reminding us every single day that, well, that was in Africa and this is America, so it's very different. So
Are there times that you, the traditional woman, and your husband, the traditional African, are there times that you feel, hey, you stepping overboard, you're being too African in an environment that needs some modification? And if yes, what are such moments?
Yes. And of course, me, and I would just say my dad is a typical, my husband, his dad is a typical African man. And so Nathan would look at that, and they all would look at that and say, Dad, what you're saying doesn't just make any sense at all. Because he would be saying how when I was in Sase and this happened and that happened. So we need to find a way in general as patients to think how we were raised and to take the good parts of that and merge it with the American system, because our kids are exposed to so many things. And believe it or not, and they go and research. I say, Dad, but you said this, but I went on the internet and I saw this and I saw that. And my husband and I will look at us and like, these kids are just way too much for us at this point, because they have a lot of information. So yes, we do sometimes need to reset and realize that it's a different culture. The way of communication is different. The way of engagement is different, and try to, like the Bible says, come and let's reason together, and try to reason together with the kids so that together we can get to our outcomes.
Doreen, before I let you go, what do you think, especially immigrant parents in Europe and the United States, struggle with when raising their teenage children?
A couple of things. First is that a lot of us are struggling with inner child healings. A lot of us, the way we were raised and brought up doesn't serve us right. A lot of us are dealing with unresolved issues because of the various parenting styles, from the way we were raised, the various sibling issues, and stepmom and stepdad, and father did this to my sister and didn't do this to my aunt. So we have not reconciled that past conflicts. And if we are not very intentional as we grow and become parents, we're going to take that internal conflict and the parenting styles of our parents, and it will really, really affect our children negatively. So as I say, in America, to be a good parent, you have to start with you, assessing you, how you show up, how you parent, and you might need to make some changes because the kids here are very outspoken, they have a lot of information, and they can really question you. And number two, do not take things personally when the kids talk to you. I personally have learned a lot from my 5 kids just by communicating with them and having really hard, tough discussions with them. And so sometimes they will say something, and believe it or not, I'll be like, wow, they really, 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 really make sense. And that has really helped me out to really engage with them, ask them questions, and find a way to connect with them so that, together I can help them, because the world is not the best with our kids.
Before I let you go, Doreen, I thought I was asking you for last question, but let me ask you. Yeah, I mean, you come on so strong, and I can expect, I can envisage what Dr. Munang is going to say. Yeah, it's a strong guy in communication. Doreen, are there times that you struggle between being the parent who should exercise authority and worrying whether that would carry you across as being weak to your children?
So maybe in the past, but I have grown to know that I'm a mother and I'm not a friend. I've grown to realize that we are friends, but there is a line. For example, my daughter is 20 years old. It's almost 20 years old. She's going to call me right after this if I say she's 20. She's going to be 20 in May. So, so out of 5 kids, I have 1 girl, and Nathan is the youngest, he's 14. So I'm very, very authoritative at sometimes, and then I know how to balance it. You have to know when to say what and when to say what. I don't know if you understand what I'm just trying to say, because their kids have to understand that regardless of how you want to engage them, regardless of how you want the best of them, you are still a mother that is there to guide, lead, and direct them towards the right path. And to be honest with you, it's hard for me to say this. Some of us parents need to prove that to our kids. Right? We need to prove that by our own values. We need to not only say it, we have to walk it. It has to be the doing of what we are telling our kids. There is a huge conflict in our parental styles when our parents are saying one thing, but they're doing the opposite. There are a lot of African parents, please forgive me if I say this, that are not that responsible. And they expect their kids to be responsible. You're not home at night. You don't spend time with your kids. You don't go to the kids' function. You don't go to their games, but you can hang out. You can be at all-night parties. You come home late. And then you tell your kids, study hard, go to school. You just tell them, but you're not part of them. So it's hard for the kids to respect that kind of a parent. We have to find time. There are parents that are working doubles, triples, and all that, but they're missing the time of interaction, of engagement, of finding their kids why and directing their kids towards that path. For example, your child, you might say you have to be a lawyer or a doctor. That you understand their passion, their desire, and that, just like my beautiful daughter was saying earlier, and you work with your parents to guide you towards that path. So we need to pause and assess, because our family is what defines our why. They know us by our deeds, and our deeds as our children. So we need to re-strategize, spend time, and grow them accordingly.
Doreen Fobi-Takusi.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doreen. And in a moment, we will have Dr. Richard Munang. I want to ask you, how do you react to that? You are a lady, and probably one day will be Dr. Danielle. The way you're coming on strong, that will not surprise me. So how do you react to Dr. Doreen Takusi, Nathan's mom?
Yeah, so I think that you brought up a lot of brilliant points regarding parenting, especially in the diaspora. And with this, she also talked about how there are different roles and how she's not solely a friend, she's also a mother, and that comes first. And I think that also relates to the influx of crime, because a lot of kids, especially teenagers, think that them and their parents, they have to be like this, they have to be friends like their besties, which although that's true and it's good to have a great relationship with your parent, there has to be a line between, especially with respect. And a lot of children and especially teenagers forget that, and that leads to a lot of conflicts. And then they start to find trust more in their friends than in their parents. And then that trust can lead to peer pressure, which leads to eventually wrong decisions. So I really liked her point on that, and also about how blending the cultural and traditional African examples and living that example rather than just saying, but also doing.
Beautiful. And you are watching Voices of Africa. In a moment, we'll be having Dr. Richard Munang on the phone, on the line from Canada. All right, we will bring on Dr. Richard Munang momentarily. Dr. Richard Munang, please get ready. Okay, you're on the line. Hello, Dr. Munang.
Hello, Mr. Chamukong.
I have to say that you are doing a terrific job. What is it that you are doing that other parents are not doing to produce this kind of daughter?
Well, I think every parent, wherever they are, I mean, they do their best. And I think they give their all. And what makes the difference is to understand that the role of a parent is different from the role of a child. And the role of a child is different from the role of a parent. And therefore, giving them the space in which they're supposed to be in without negating what needs to be done from the parent side actually allows them to strike. Because the reality is that they need guidance. And as parents, we've gone long ahead of them.
I've been having
so we need
yes, go ahead.
to then be we need to use our experiences to then be able to give them the right mentorship and hold their hand, but also understanding that they have some aspects and some understanding in issues that we may not have had them before. And so we should also be open-minded to listen, but not necessarily forgetting that we have to play the role as a parent. That's what makes the difference.
Are there
I think
times that children would come across as unreasonable to parents? And what would you recommend is the best way to handle that?
Well, of course, they will always come across sometimes, especially when they have views, and those views are picked up from school, picked up from their peers, and picked up from the environments in which they interact. But I think what happens is to start making the kids to understand that it's not everything that they want or do that is right, and therefore they need to be corrected. And setting those boundaries and putting those limits, that there is just what you can do, which can reach this limit. For example, a practical example is allowing kids to read all the time. I mean, that's not healthy. And you're not going to make your kid to be sharp and intelligent by forcing him or her to read all the time without also giving room for her to play or engage him or her in extracurricular activity. And so there needs to be a balance. And then there also needs to be discipline. And I strongly believe in discipline, where when you say don't do it, and it's done, you have to punish that child, to set the example and to set that precedence, to know that if it happens, then there are going to be repercussions for it. And I think we've done that and it worked. So I will tell parents to listen, to have an open mind to learn, but to also understand that a kid is just as good as also yourself. And I think the mother of Nathan put it very clearly: you cannot preach water and drink wine and expect your child to drink only water. And therefore, you must lead by example and set the stage to also allow that kid. Because the truth is this: what I've noticed is that a lot of young people look up for role models. And the first role models they have is their parents. And so if the parents are doing something contrary and telling them to do something, they will say, that, why didn't you do it yourself? And that is a legitimate question, but it will come at sometimes as condescending. But if you set that good example and said, I'm here and I've done this, so you have to do it if you want to succeed, but it might not be a linear path for you, but pick the principles and go with it.
Dr. Richard Munang, before I let you go, you used the word mentoring. While I understand that what that means, I'm almost certain a lot of parents don't. What do you mean by parental mentoring? What do you mean by that? Give us some concrete examples.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, a very practical example is you are a journalist and you have your daughters and they may want to go into fashion, or they've already gone into fashion, for example. You can be able to help guide them with communication skills and how to approach issues and how to pass a message. And I think using lessons learned from parents to impact on their kids, on the pathway the kids want to take, not on their footsteps, because that is the biggest error. Mentorship is pretty much helping others to see what they have but don't know, and at the same time helping them with what they know but don't know how to take themselves forward with it. And so continuous guidance, and in the process of guiding them, helping them to see what they have but they never knew they had, is actually what to move forward. I even use the case of Danielle. She is an eloquent speaker, but she needed to understand there is a difference between speaking and communicating facts and communicating information, because you can be speaking without communicating. And so to communicate, you doesn't necessarily need to speak for quite a very long time, because you can speak for a long time without necessarily passing a message. And so that guidance is important. And so the last aspect, I think, is you cannot mentor on aspects you do not know or understand. And therefore, for parents, they need to really also have a grasp. And I like what Nathan said. You cannot be able to mentor somebody when you do not understand what you are mentoring that person with. You don't have the facts, you don't have the experience in it. So we should use what we know to guide our children to move forward, and also learn from them, because they are in the fast lane of information at the moment. And with that, us also having the open-mindedness to get what we can get from them and increase our own understanding of issues which we might not know, it will not work. So at the end of the day, they also mentor us in one way or the other as we mentor them. And so we have to meet in the middle.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Richard Munang, connecting from Canada.
Thank you.
Wow. This is a beautiful, beautiful show. Lots of people, and just, you know what? You have to have other parents watch this broadcast. You have to have other teenagers watch this. I mean, I'm learning a lot from both of you. I have to be honest with that. I'm learning a lot from Nathan, learning a lot from Danielle. I'm going to have you first, Nathan, give your last word in about 2 minutes or so as concluding remarks. And then, of course, I'll bring Danielle. I want you to speak to parents and then speak to teenagers, your peers, your age group. Now, Nathan, you have the platform. All to you.
Thank you very much. First off, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to educate some people on my experiences as a 14-year-old. One thing that I want parents to know is basically just have an open mind when you're talking to your kids. Just knowing sometimes kids are going through a lot of things, and sometimes they might not want to talk, but just make sure that they know that you're there, and they know that you are a safe space, and that every time they say something that you might not like, you won't just blow up. Because sometimes that's why certain kids are afraid to talk to their parents. Just let them know that you can, you're there for them, and that you are willing to talk, and you're willing to share your advice, and just share an ear to listen to the things that they have to say. For the teenagers, I just want to say, don't give in to peer pressure. And the most important thing is to stay disciplined. Self-discipline is an attribute or a trait that every single person should have. When you're disciplined, you know what to do, when to do it, and you know how to make certain choices. So if you're disciplined, then everything else will fall into place. If you're disciplined and you wanna become a lawyer, you'll be disciplined in learning about law. If you want to be a doctor, you'll be disciplined in learning about medicine. If you're disciplined in any field whatsoever, then yeah, you'll everything will fall into place. So again, thank you very much for having me, and God bless.
Hooray! Hooray!
Nathan, I have to say, you have been extraordinary.
Thank you.
It's so sweet. We could be here till tomorrow. But I'm going to have to bring this lady, this beautiful, brilliant lady, and that is Danielle Munang. Danielle, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to speak to parents and to speak to your peers. You have the platform.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was such a great opportunity to discuss issues that not only teenagers face, but also parents seeing the effect of violence among teenagers, especially in the diaspora today. And what we need to do is stop the crime. And in order for us to stop the crime, life is a matter of choices. And if you make the choice to fall into peer pressure, then you make the choice to fall into a life of crime. However, if we make the choice to say no, but to say yes to opportunity, say yes to discipline, and to say yes to following your own path with the guidance of your parents, then we say yes to a bright and successful future. With this, what I say to parents is that you and your children, although you have distinct roles, you have to work together in order to create a good balance. And through hearing the other side, you can allow your child to express their thoughts, and you can express your thoughts and find a common ground, while also respecting the difference in ideologies due to the difference in times. And what I would say to a teenager watching this is saying no is not a bad thing. If you say no and you lose 2 friends, it is way better than saying yes and losing 10 years of your life due to being sentenced for a crime. And a crime isn't just the ones we see on the news. A crime could be going down the wrong path. A crime could be your grades slipping. A crime could be you being kicked out of your extracurriculars. A crime could be you just even having detention one day just because of a decision you took just to follow a crowd. In conclusion, I say you must say no to the path of others which don't align with your values, and say yes to moving forward and developing your own path through the mentorship of your parents and following their advice.
Is unbelievable. I mean, yes, go ahead. You were finishing your sentence.
Oh, yeah. So that was about it. And we must stop the crime. And in order for us to do this, we must say no to peer pressure and yes to developing our own passions.
We love Chat Night Africa.
Danielle, you people just swept me off my feet, and your participation is memorable. I really, really, really think every young person, every teen, every parent, by the way, should watch the show. It is on the internet, www.chatnightafrica.net in high definition. It's on YouTube in high definition. It's on LinkedIn. It's on 2 places on Facebook. So you have no reason not to watch this. Danielle, thank you so, so much.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to ask you, would you be running someday for a political office?
Well, the end goal is to change the world, and no matter what path that may be, if going into politics and being a parliamentarian of one of it should happen. But at the moment, I'm not sure. But being politically and civically active is key, especially in a country like Canada where democracy is their foundation, same with the US. So whether I go into politics or not, I will definitely be civically active, because in order for us to change the world, it starts with our local communities.
Okay, we hear you. If you run for politics, run for office, I'm going to be campaigning for you. I'll be a campaign manager. This is beautiful. I mean, Nathan, you are a dynamite. You, Danielle, whoa, your participation gives me so much joy. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go, I'd like you to get a little jingle, and I will be right